In the quiet outskirts of Greenhill, beneath a pale, moonlit sky, a tiny orange kitten lay trembling, abandoned at the water's edge, his fragile cries swallowed by the night. Watching from the shadows was Max, a stray puppy whose heart had known only survival until that very moment. Would he walk away, or would compassion change his life forever? If stories like these touch your heart, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this video, because together, we can give voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Max lifted his head, ears pricked high, listening carefully to the soft sounds of the night. It was unusually cold for early autumn, and a thin fog drifted silently over the grass near Greenhill's lakeside park. Life as a stray German Shepherd puppy had made him cautious, always alert to threats lurking in shadows or voices that could mean harm. At just 6 months old, Max already knew well the biting pangs of hunger, the chill of lonely nights, and how to melt quietly into darkness whenever humans approached. His fur was a rich mixture of tan and black, but lately, grime and hunger had dulled its once vibrant sheen. His almond-shaped brown eyes held a depth far beyond his youth, reflecting a wisdom forged too soon by hardship. Tonight, though, something else drifted on the crisp night air, a fragile cry, a barely audible sound trembling at the edges of silence. Max stood completely still, his body tense, trying to pinpoint its source. It came again, weaker yet persistent, and unmistakably desperate. Instinct and curiosity warred within him. He had learned to prioritize his own safety, but this call stirred something deeper, something he couldn't ignore. Moving cautiously through the mist-shrouded grass, Max followed the sound toward the lake's edge, each paw step quiet yet resolute. The shoreline, bathed in the gentle silver glow of moonlight, appeared empty at first glance. But as Max crept closer, he saw a tiny figure curled against the mud and damp reeds. A small orange kitten lay there, barely moving, its thin body shaking uncontrollably from the cold. The kitten's fur was matted and dirty, clinging to a fragile frame clearly weakened by days of hunger and neglect. Its eyes, wide and fearful, reflected nothing but confusion and abandonment. Max stopped, unsure of what to do next. He had little experience with other animals, let alone such a helpless creature. Yet, as he watched the kitten shiver, something inside him began to soften, breaking through the cautious barriers he had carefully built. He approached slowly, lowering his head, sniffing gently. The kitten tried to lift its head but failed, emitting another weak cry that tugged painfully at Max's heart. The young dog's mind flashed back briefly to memories he'd tried hard to forget. Warm bodies of siblings curled beside him, their comforting scents before humans had taken them all away. Now, seeing this helpless kitten, Max felt an undeniable surge of protectiveness. Gently, he laid down beside the kitten, using his larger body to shield it from the biting wind, carefully nudging the small orange ball of fur closer into the warmth of his chest. Slowly, the kitten's trembling lessened, comforted by Max's reassuring presence. Though neither spoke, their shared loneliness bound them together instantly, a bond born from the cold night and a need neither could fully understand. Throughout the long hours until dawn, Max stayed awake, alert and protective, his gentle breathing mingling with the kitten's delicate gasps, waiting for the first rays of sun to rise above the horizon. As morning broke, the lake mirrored the gentle pastel colors of dawn. Max rose carefully, feeling the stiffness in his limbs from the night spent protecting his newfound companion. The kitten blinked weakly, looking up at Max with eyes that held a mixture of fear and trust. Max knew instinctively that he could not leave the kitten here, vulnerable and alone. Despite the uncertainty and fear of venturing closer to humans, he knew that finding help was their only chance for survival. Taking a careful step forward, Max glanced down reassuringly at the kitten. With gentle encouragement, he coaxed the little feline onto unsteady paws. The kitten stumbled, weak but determined, following closely behind Max as they began their slow, uncertain journey toward the town's outskirts. Fear gnawed at Max's heart, but determination overrode his instinctual caution. For the first time, he wasn't thinking solely of his own survival. but of theirs together. As the pair moved away from the lake, the morning sun gradually warmed their fur, chasing away remnants of the bitter chill. Max felt strangely hopeful, sensing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. And in that moment, a tiny orange kitten and a young stray German shepherd took their first uncertain steps toward an unknown future, bound by fate, compassion, and a shared dream of finding a place to call home. Max moved slowly, his careful steps guiding the frail kitten along the uneven path toward Greenhill's edge. Though daylight had warmed the air slightly, anxiety still stirred within his chest, born of bitter experiences. Humans meant risk, uncertainty, potential harm, but they were also the kitten's only chance. Max felt torn, pausing frequently to glance down at Oliver, whose small paws struggled through patches of tangled grass. The kitten's breathing was shallow, his strength waning with every shaky step, eyes pleading silently for help. Max recognized that look all too well. It mirrored the desperation he'd felt himself when hunger and fear had first forced him onto the lonely streets. They crossed carefully beneath the sparse canopy of maple trees, leaves just beginning their autumn transformation, whispering softly in the wind as if offering quiet encouragement. A sudden rustling startled Max, sending adrenaline coursing through his young body. He crouched low instinctively, shielding Oliver behind him, but it was only a bird taking flight, leaving nothing but an echoing silence in its wake. Still, the experience reminded Max just how vulnerable they were, alone and exposed. At last, the outskirts of the town appeared in the distance, marked by quiet suburban streets lined with modest homes and neatly kept lawns. Max had always steered clear of these neighborhoods, wary of doors opening, voices calling, or heavy footsteps approaching. Humans were unpredictable, capable of kindness, yet also cruelty, and trust was something he had lost along with his family. His heart quickened, anxiety clawing at him as he considered retreating back to the familiar safety of solitude. But when he turned again to Oliver, shivering and visibly weaker, Max knew he could not turn away. Not this time. He made a choice, deep within himself, to risk everything. He carefully guided Oliver toward the closest houses, senses alert to every movement, every sound. The kitten stumbled often, mewing weakly in protest, but Max patiently encouraged him onward with soft, reassuring nudges. They reached a quiet street, empty save for an elderly man watering bright flowers in his front yard. Max hesitated, studying him from afar. The man was tall and thin, with neatly combed silver-gray hair and a gentle expression, his lined face warmed by years of quiet smiles. Yet Max couldn't overcome his lingering doubts. He decided they needed someone else, someone whose kindness felt unquestionable and immediate. Further down the street, he spotted a small house, painted a warm, sunlit yellow, surrounded by blooming flower beds and a neatly swept porch. There, kneeling among clusters of lavender and daisies, was Eleanor, a kind-faced elderly woman known throughout Greenhill for her gentle demeanor and her open heart towards animals. She was petite, with soft white curls framing her round, welcoming face. Her blue eyes, bright with compassion, shone clearly even from Max's cautious distance. Max sensed an immediate calm from her movements, the way she carefully trimmed her plants, her soft humming drifting through the air like a lullaby. She felt safe, exactly the kind of human Oliver desperately needed. Max led Oliver closer, pausing just behind a low bush at the garden's edge. He took a deep breath, gathering his courage, before stepping cautiously into Eleanor's view. The woman glanced up from her gardening, startled but curious, immediately noticing the young dog and the tiny, trembling kitten beside him. Oliver, sensing help was near, gave a faint, pleading mew and collapsed against Max's side, exhaustion overtaking him. Eleanor's heart softened instantly at the sight. "Oh, you poor little ones," she whispered gently, rising slowly from her kneeling position. Her voice was calm and soothing, devoid of threat, as she slowly approached them, hands extended softly in a gesture of kindness. Max's muscles tightened instinctively, prepared to flee if necessary, but Eleanor's gentle tone and slow approach gave him pause. He stood protectively over Oliver, watching carefully as she knelt down just a few feet away, speaking softly. "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe now," she murmured reassuringly. Max stared deeply into her eyes, searching for any hint of deception, but found only warmth and sincerity reflected back. Hesitantly, he stepped back slightly, allowing her access to Oliver, though he never took his eyes off the tiny, defenseless creature he had vowed to protect. Eleanor gently lifted Oliver into her warm hands, her eyes filling with compassion and sorrow as she felt the tiny kitten's frail, trembling body. "You're barely holding on," she whispered lovingly. "But don't worry, I'll take care of you." She turned slowly towards her home, pausing briefly to glance over her shoulder at Max, who remained frozen, uncertainty visible in his gaze. "Come on, you too," she softly invited. "There's room and kindness enough here for both of you." Max stood motionless, heart pounding in confusion and hope. He'd expected to deliver Oliver safely, yet Eleanor's words offered him something he hadn't dared hope for, a chance at warmth, safety, and perhaps even a home. With hesitation battling the desperate longing within him, Max took one cautious step forward, then another, following the kind woman who had offered them refuge from the harsh loneliness of the world they had known. The warmth of Eleanor's cozy home was like a distant promise, still separated by uncertainty and fear. As Max slowly followed her across the threshold, every cautious step echoing with hesitation. Oliver lay limp, yet trusting in Eleanor's arms, tiny head resting against her gentle chest, comforted by the slow rhythm of her heartbeat. Max's Paws hesitated at the doorway, the threshold marking the invisible line between his life of wary solitude and the possibility of something kinder, gentler, and perhaps safer. Eleanor glanced back at him with an encouraging nod, her eyes patient, her voice a soft melody that invited trust rather than demanded it. "It's all right, boy," she whispered gently. "You don't have to be afraid here." Max cautiously stepped inside, immediately enveloped by a feeling he had nearly forgotten, warmth and security. The home was filled with the comforting scent of lavender and freshly baked bread, scents that stirred distant memories of his earliest days, when life was still soft and kind. Eleanor placed Oliver gently onto a plush blanket by the fireplace, carefully inspecting him with tender care. "You're safe now, little one," she murmured softly, carefully cleaning his tiny, exhausted body with a warm, damp cloth, removing grime and dirt accumulated from his harrowing ordeal. Max watched intently, vigilant and protective, yet slowly beginning to trust the woman's kindness. Despite their newfound refuge, Oliver's condition remained fragile. Eleanor knew he needed nourishment urgently and moved swiftly to her kitchen to prepare a small bowl of warm milk. Max observed her careful movements from a cautious distance, muscles still tense from lingering wariness. But when Eleanor placed the bowl gently before Oliver, her eyes glistened softly with empathy. "Drink this, sweetheart. You need your strength." The tiny kitten eagerly began to lap up the milk, tiny mouth trembling with each delicate sip, strength returning slowly but visibly. Eleanor turned to Max, noticing for the first time how gaunt and exhausted he appeared, his ribs faintly visible beneath his dusty coat. Her heart ached for him, understanding instinctively the quiet sacrifices he'd already made for his tiny companion. She quickly prepared a bowl filled with scraps of fresh chicken and rice, setting it down near him, her movements slow and gentle to avoid startling him. Max hesitated briefly, torn between his ingrained caution and the painful hunger gnawing deep in his belly. Finally, he gave in, approaching the bowl with quiet dignity, savoring every bite, yet periodically glancing toward Oliver, ensuring the kitten remained safe and cared for. As the hours passed, daylight gradually faded, replaced by the quiet shadows of evening. Eleanor gently placed a thick, soft blanket near the fireplace, inviting Max closer with patient, welcoming eyes. He moved cautiously toward the warm comfort of the fire, settling down near Oliver, his body protectively curled around the kitten. Eleanor watched them silently, smiling softly as she sat back in her rocking chair. The glow of the fire illuminated her gentle features, highlighting the kindness and compassion etched deeply into her face, traits born from years of quiet love and gentle caregiving. Throughout the night, Oliver stirred fitfully, still weak and struggling to regain strength. Each time, Max responded instinctively, gently nudging and reassuring the fragile kitten with comforting warmth. Eleanor watched their bond deepen from her chair, heart touched profoundly by their unexpected companionship. Max, despite his own exhaustion, stayed vigilant, providing Oliver with the comfort and protection he'd never known himself, determined that his young companion would never feel abandoned again. By morning, Oliver showed signs of improvement, his small eyes clearer and movements slightly stronger, though exhaustion remained heavy upon him. Eleanor continued to care for both animals tirelessly, understanding deeply the trauma each had endured and quietly marveling at their resilience. Yet, despite the increasing comfort, Max remained cautious, his instincts sharpened by long days and nights of survival. Even surrounded by Eleanor's kindness, he maintained a quiet watchfulness, prepared to protect Oliver at any sign of danger. In quiet moments beside the fire, Max began to recognize the strange warmth that filled him was more than just physical. It was a gentle stirring of hope. A life spent fearing others had taught him loneliness. But now, in the calm presence of Eleanor's gentle compassion and Oliver's innocent trust, he felt an unfamiliar peace. The bitter chill of isolation began to slowly fade, replaced by something softer, warmer, like sunlight gently breaking through clouds after a long storm. Max, with quiet courage, embraced the fragile beginnings of trust, daring for the first time to imagine a life touched by kindness, shared warmth, and companionship, a life he had never thought possible. Days gently passed in the quiet warmth of Eleanor's home, nestled among the peaceful outskirts of Greenhill, as autumn deepened into golden hues around them. The elderly widow, Eleanor Simmons, had lived in this modest cottage alone for nearly a decade since her husband, William, passed away, yet her heart remained open and warm. In her late 70s, Eleanor was a petite woman with soft white hair and eyes that mirrored the calm, tranquil waters of the lake nearby. Her movements carried the quiet grace of someone who had known both joy and sorrow, yet chose kindness above all else. Loneliness had become familiar to her, until Max and Oliver gently entered her quiet life, bringing a light she didn't know she missed. Under Eleanor's tender care, Oliver steadily regained his strength. The once fragile kitten now moved with curiosity and playfulness, chasing small balls of yarn across Eleanor's living room floor, his tiny paws slipping occasionally on the polished wood, prompting soft laughter from Eleanor's chair. His bright orange coat shone beautifully in the sunlight that streamed softly through the windows, and the deep gratitude in his gentle green eyes spoke volumes, even without words. Max, however, took longer to fully embrace the newfound security of their shelter. His life as a stray had deeply etched caution into his soul. Despite Eleanor's gentle voice and patient demeanor, he remained wary, always alert, always watchful. Yet slowly, day by day, something softened within him. Eleanor's kindness was consistent and unwavering, offering food, warmth, and safety without expectation. Gradually, Max's trust blossomed quietly, a fragile seed nurtured by gentle hands. He would allow Eleanor to stroke his sleek black and tan coat, each gentle touch reinforcing the growing bond between them, a bond forged from patience and quiet understanding. Eleanor, too, found healing in caring for the two animals. Their presence filled the silence that had settled within her cottage for years, a quiet companionship that eased the ache of her solitude. She noticed the special bond between Max and Oliver, the protective way the young German shepherd watched over the small kitten, always vigilant, always gentle. She admired Max's steadfast loyalty, recognizing the quiet strength in his eyes, the dignity he maintained despite his challenging past. Eleanor understood, perhaps better than most, that compassion often blossomed brightest from hearts that had known pain. Each evening, the trio found comfort near the soft glow of the fireplace, a daily ritual that became their shared moment of peace. Eleanor would softly hum old melodies, the same tunes William once loved, her gentle voice weaving memories through the air, while Oliver curled contentedly on her lap. Max rested near her feet, quietly soaking in the warmth of both fire and companionship, his eyes closing slowly, feeling for the first time since his lonely existence began, a profound sense of belonging. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered softly through autumn leaves outside, Eleanor watched Max gently nudge Oliver away from the front door, ensuring the kitten didn't wander toward potential dangers beyond the safety of their home. Her heart swelled with admiration for Max's quiet courage, how, despite his fear, he chose every day to protect the weaker one. This selfless devotion inspired Eleanor to make a decision, one that had quietly taken root within her over the days they spent together. That evening, Eleanor carefully knelt down beside Max, softly stroking his head, feeling his tense muscles gradually relax under her gentle touch. "Max," she whispered tenderly, "I know life has been hard for you. Trust doesn't come easily, does it?" She looked into his warm eyes, sensing the quiet longing within him, the lingering fear battling his desire to fully accept her love. "But you're safe now. You both are. And as long as I'm here, you'll have a home, a place filled with warmth, kindness, and love." Max listened intently, ears pricked forward, understanding more deeply than Eleanor might have imagined. His heart swelled with gratitude and relief. In that moment, something deep inside shifted. The lingering shadows of fear that had haunted him slowly began to fade, replaced by a cautious, hopeful trust. Max gently laid his head upon Eleanor's knee, his breathing steady and calm, silently accepting her promise. For the first time in his young life, he allowed himself to believe in the permanence of kindness. The soft, peaceful glow of evening settled around them, illuminating three souls who had found each other amidst loneliness and hardship. Eleanor smiled softly, recognizing the gentle, powerful bond that had formed between them all. She had once believed her days of caring deeply for another were behind her, yet here she was, heart opened once again by a courageous young dog and a tiny kitten who had taught them all that even after loss, love could bloom again, quietly, beautifully, and unconditionally. As weeks quietly unfolded into months, Eleanor's small cottage transformed into a place of genuine joy, radiating a gentle warmth that seemed to push away the shadows of her solitude. Oliver had grown strong and playful, his vibrant orange fur shimmering as he danced mischievously around the cozy living room, pouncing on small sunbeams or chasing imaginary creatures in circles of endless energy. His green eyes sparkled with youthful mischief, filling Eleanor's heart with soft laughter and pride. Watching him blossom from a helpless kitten into a lively companion filled her days with purpose once more, soothing the quiet ache of loneliness that had shadowed her heart for years. Max, the young German shepherd who had once known only cold nights and wary hunger, slowly adjusted to this new, unfamiliar reality, a place where kindness was abundant, fears gently eased, and each morning brought warmth instead of worry. The protective instincts he had forged through hardship remained, yet now those instincts found gentle expression in quiet watchfulness and unwavering care. He kept a constant eye on Oliver, patiently enduring playful swats and enthusiastic pounces from the kitten. Their unique friendship deepened daily, forming a bond, unspoken yet understood perfectly by both. Max no longer felt alone. Instead, he discovered a deep, comforting companionship, unlike anything he had ever known. For Eleanor, caring for Max and Oliver brought renewed strength and joy, gradually filling the quiet emptiness of her home and heart. She found herself rising early, greeting each sunrise with gratitude as she prepared food for her companions, the comforting routine giving her a renewed sense of purpose. Neighbors soon noticed the gentle happiness radiating from her face whenever they visited, smiling softly at how Eleanor's cottage, once quiet and solitary, now overflowed with laughter and quiet chatter to her beloved animals. The woman who once spent days quietly knitting or reading alone now enjoyed bustling mornings in her garden, accompanied faithfully by Max, whose attentive eyes watched over her as she planted flowers, weeded beds, or simply rested beneath her favorite oak tree. Eleanor had never expected her quiet years of solitude to be so beautifully disrupted, yet each evening as she sat beside the glowing fire, Oliver purring softly on her lap and Max curled protectively at her feet, she knew the universe had offered her a rare and beautiful gift. She had provided shelter and warmth for these two souls, yet they had given her something far more precious, the quiet understanding that love could always return, even after sorrow. Life, Eleanor realized, never ceased offering new beginnings, even to hearts she thought had long ago stopped believing in them. One crisp autumn afternoon, while leaves drifted softly from the trees outside, Eleanor sat quietly on her porch, watching Oliver leap playfully among fallen leaves, while Max stood guard nearby, quietly observing his small friend with gentle tolerance. The old woman smiled softly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. It was a perfect, simple moment, the kind she once feared lost forever. Her quiet contemplation was gently interrupted by the familiar sound of her neighbor, Maggie Thompson, strolling up the garden path. Maggie, a kind woman in her 60s known throughout Greenhill for her easy laughter and generous heart, waved warmly, smiling broadly as she noticed Oliver chasing Max's gently swishing tail. "Eleanor, it warms my heart seeing your house so full of life again," Maggie said, stopping beside the porch railing. Her voice was cheerful yet gentle, reflecting genuine happiness for her old friend. Eleanor smiled warmly back, nodding toward Max and Oliver, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I never expected to find family again after losing William," she admitted softly. "But these two, they've taught me that love and companionship can still blossom, even in unexpected places." Maggie's eyes softened as she watched Eleanor gently reach down, stroking Max's sleek coat with tender affection. Max tilted his head slightly, quietly savoring the loving touch, a deep sense of belonging settling warmly within his heart. That evening, as sunlight melted gently into twilight, Eleanor welcomed Max and Oliver into her living room, sitting quietly together in their nightly ritual beside the softly glowing fireplace. She spoke quietly, words filled with warmth and sincerity. "I want you both to know," she whispered softly, her eyes misted gently with emotion, "that as long as I have breath, you'll always have a home here. We found each other when we needed it most, and this home, our home, is complete because you are here." Oliver purred softly in agreement, nestled against Eleanor's side, while Max gently rested his head upon her knee, silently accepting the comfort and permanence of her promise. In that gentle, perfect moment, three hearts quietly understood the beautiful truth that life had brought them together for a reason, each filling a quiet emptiness that only the others could heal. Eleanor's cottage, once cold, quiet, and marked by loneliness, was now a home filled with warmth, laughter, and unconditional love, proof that even after loss and hardship, joy and meaning could return in ways beautifully unexpected. In the quiet corners of our lives, love often arrives softly, in the most unexpected forms, sometimes as a gentle paw placed trustingly in our hand, or a pair of eyes gazing up with silent gratitude. Max and Oliver reminded Eleanor, and all of us, that loyalty, sacrifice, and kindness can heal even the deepest wounds, transforming loneliness into warmth and strangers into family. If stories like these gently touch your heart, consider subscribing to join our journey, because together we can keep kindness alive, one story at a time.